Sinister is one of the scariest movies of all time. It has three crucial elements that set it apart from other horror films. I've seen quite a few horror movies, and nearly all of them failed to scare me. Sinister is one of the only ones I would say that has legitimately scared me. This video will contain spoilers and is completely subjective. The first half of the movie starts off fantastic, showing a family being hanged from a tree. It immediately puts you on edge and soon reveals that Ellison Oswalt, the main character, has moved into the house in which the hangings take place. Ellison is a crime writer looking for his next big hit book. He feels that he needs to be near the crime scene to connect with it, so he moves into the house where the hangings take place without telling his family. This creates an obvious tension throughout the film, which constantly builds. As they move into the new house, Ellison finds a box of tapes in the attic, which leads me to the first crucial element that makes this film stand out. Reason 1. The tapes. The tapes are easily one of the scariest parts of this movie. Ellison watches the first tape in the box, which turns out to be the hangings shown at the beginning of the film, but this time you can see the build-up to the event. The tape is titled Family Hanging Out 11. It shows the family having a nice time in the backyard on a seemingly normal day, but upon closer look you can see that the family is being filmed unknowingly. Suddenly the tape cuts to the family being tied to the tree, and they're slowly lifted up. The viewer watches Ellison in visible discomfort as he watches the family struggle for their lives. The next tape is titled Barbecue 79, which is definitely the highlight of the film for me. The scene terrifies me every single time I watch it. The tape begins similar to the last one, showing a family having fun at a barbecue, but once again they're being filmed unknowingly. The tape cuts to the family being locked in their own car in their own garage. The person filming walks around the car while peering inside at the helpless family. Then, the car is lit on fire, simultaneously burning the family alive. The first time I ever saw this scene, I was absolutely terrified. There are several more tapes throughout this film, but these two specifically stand out from the others. One of the reasons that they stand out is because of the music played during them, which leads me to my next crucial element. Reason 2. The music. The music in this film is really what makes it stand out from other horror films. I believe that music is extremely underrated and underused in movies, especially horror movies, and all the best movies have amazing soundtracks. Music makes for an amazing method to set the mood of the scene and can really put you on edge. The song played in Family Hanging Out 11 is the first song in the film that's especially creepy. It's not the scariest song of the film, but it is the first song played in the tapes, and the eeriness of this song sets the tone for the rest of the tapes. Every time a new song plays from the tapes, you know that it's going to be one of the highlights of the movie. This feeling is only heightened with the second tape, Barbecue 79. I'll play a clip of it to give you an idea of how scary it really is. The beginning of the song is already unsettling enough, but the switch when it shows them in the car leaves you paralyzed with fear. The piano in the beginning sets a very eerie tone, leaving you in anticipation for what's going to happen next, similar to the song played in the first tape, but after the song shifts when the tape cuts to the family in the car, it leaves you in pure terror. Extremely unsettling vocals are played, making you feel like someone's watching you as you watch the movie. It gives you an intense feeling that you are not safe and makes you extremely on edge. Even just listening to this song without the tape leaves me feeling terrified. Another distinct song played in the movie is Gyroscope. It plays while Ellison burns the tapes, trying to rid himself and his family of the things that have been happening to them. Ever since they moved into the house, strange things have been happening and they only seem to get worse. Ellison decides to get rid of the tapes, which he believes started this whole thing. The song creates the perfect feeling for the scene. As you can imagine, Ellison would be extremely desperate and frantically trying to get rid of the tapes that have been plaguing his life. I'll play a clip of the song now. The song is extremely chaotic and hectic and sets the perfect tone. Nothing particularly scary happens in the scene, but it's still one of the most intense scenes in the whole film, purely because of the desperation heard in the music. The comments on the YouTube videos of each of these three songs really shows you how scary they actually are. Everyone seems to agree that this music is what sets the movie apart from other horror movies, with comments like, "Quite honestly, the most scary theme to a horror movie I've ever heard, ever," and "It's too bad that most horror movies nowadays don't have a soundtrack nearly as unsettling as this." Along with the second half of this song, the part that was played when they were set afire in the car, is the creepiest horror music I've ever heard in my life. That's why I had to go looking for it on YouTube. I've never heard anything like it. And finally, I truly agree with all the comments here. Sinister wasn't a bad film in itself, but the soundtrack was what made it unique and horrifying. No score has ever frightened me as much as the Sinister soundtrack. The final element that makes this movie so scary is the realism in the first half of the film. Reason 3. Realism. I personally think that only the first half of this movie is scary. The second half ruins the realism set in the beginning and tends to use cheap scares for the rest of the film after running out of tapes in the first half. I think a lot of people could still enjoy the second half, but for me personally, usually when a supernatural element is brought into a story, I feel it loses what makes it so scary because I know this can never happen to me in real life. In the first half, it seems like all the tapes could be filmed by one person with sinister intentions to abduct and murder families around the country. Once you find out the villain is a supernatural being, I feel it loses some of what made the first half so special. Especially since Ellison moved into the house of the last murder, which is the pattern of the crimes, it seems to be that he's the next target. If the realism were kept into the second half, I think the intense feeling that he's next would have made the film much more terrifying. When a horror movie makes it feel like it could really happen to me in real life, it makes it so much more high stakes and scary for me. One of the reasons the second half is so disappointing is because of how well it's set up for the murders to have been committed by a human. Not only does Ellison find an obvious pattern connecting the murders, but all the murders are also connected by first disabling the family so they can't defend themselves, making it perfectly feasible for them to have been committed by one person. Later in the film, you find out that Bagul, the supernatural being, actually controls the children and makes them commit the murders. I don't really see the point in this plotline, and I think it would have been much more scary for them to all have been carried out by one person. It shows the face of Bagul earlier in the film, but the audience could easily view it as just a mask someone's using as a disguise, rather than an actual supernatural deity. I heard that a lot of the decisions made in the second half of the film were actually forced by pressure from the studio producing the movie. The directors Scott Derrickson and starring actor Ethan Hawke do a great job in both their roles, teaming up to create some of the most terrifying moments in horror movie history. That being said, the first half of this movie is still great because of the tapes, music, and realism. It does fall apart a bit in the second half, but that doesn't discredit the absolutely terrifying moments in the first half. For all those reasons, I think that Sinister still holds up as one of the scariest, if not the scariest horror movie ever created.